Hello, everyone. This is the Fulmer Street Traffic Calming Meeting #1. On behalf of the City of Ann Arbor, I'd like to thank you all for joining us and giving us this opportunity to engage with community members. These traffic calming projects are resident-initiated efforts, so without your participation, they really wouldn't be possible. If you didn't get a chance, as I said, to take the demographic poll, we'll relaunch it at the end of the meeting. Before we get into the presentation, we'll do some quick introductions. My name is Christy Thallen. I'm an engineer in training at Wade Trim Associates, which is an engineering firm based here in Southeast Michigan. Wade Trim has been contracted by the City of Ann Arbor to assist with their traffic calming projects, and this includes design work, project management, hosting the public meetings, and sending out communications to the public, like the mailings or emails you may have already received. My role with the Fulmer Street project is engagement coordinator, so I'll be your point of contact if you have any questions throughout the project. Also from Wade Trim is Lori Pollock and Chris Wall. Lori works in the traffic group at Wade Trim, and she is a professional engineer who's overseeing the engineering and design. Chris works with the municipal services group at Wade Trim. He's a professional engineer and has been serving as our client manager throughout the effort. Because we are working on behalf of the City of Ann Arbor, we've been working closely with the city's engineering staff. Andrea Wright is an engineering analyst for the city and is the traffic calming program facilitator. She's provided Wade Trim with all the tools to make this partnership as seamless as possible. And Luke Liu is a professional engineer and has helped provide us city-specific context, also giving us guidance on our design. So this is our meeting agenda for tonight. Most of tonight's time will be dedicated to section 3, where we review devices, present the starter idea, and hopefully get some feedback from attendees. As a refresher, this and the next few slides are just a technology overview. If you're joining from a computer or using the Zoom app on your phone, there are 2 ways of asking questions or providing feedback. You can either press the raise hand button at the bottom of your screen. This will notify the host. You can also lower your hand with the same button. When recognized to speak, you'll be able to unmute yourself. But if you'd rather type a question or comment out, you can press the Q&A button that's right next to the raise hand. It'll bring up a chat box. You can type whatever you need to say and then hit send. Just make sure if you'd like to send something anonymously to just check that box here in the corner. I don't see anyone who's called in, but just to go over it, if you've called into the meeting by phone, you can request to speak by dialing *9. You'll be recognized to speak by the last 3 digits of your phone number, and then the host will unmute you. You won't be able to use the Q&A function though. And then there will be multiple points throughout the presentation where community feedback will be requested through Zoom's polling feature. If you're on a computer or using the Zoom app and a poll is launched, it'll just automatically pop up. You'll be able to answer the polling question, press submit. Once the poll closes, the results also will automatically pop up. To stop viewing those, just press close at the bottom. Again, if I don't see anyone joining us who's dialing in by phone, but if you were to dial by phone and participate in a poll, you would have to raise your hand by pressing *9. Again, you'd be recognized by the last 3 digits of your phone number and unmuted, and you would be allowed to answer the question by phone and be placed back on mute. Computer polling is anonymous, but phone polling is not, so just to keep that in mind. So as a test, we'll launch our first poll. The Fulmer Street project area, it's all these properties highlighted in purple. This is the project area. This includes all addresses adjacent to the area of interest, which is this dotted black line. and addresses within 100 feet from where the project street intersects the area of interest or the local cross street. So these properties here in the corner. The properties highlighted in yellow are part of the informational area. These addresses were notified of the ongoing project, but um, those homes or those addresses don't participate in questionnaires or final polling. So I will launch the poll asking, do you live in the designated project area? Options are, I live in the project area, I live in the informational area, or I do not live in the project area or informational area. And we'll leave that up for a moment for people to answer. And we'll end the poll, share the results. So this is great. Everyone who's here tonight is a resident who's going to participate in the official questionnaire and polling. So during the presentation, and especially during any feedback from your fellow community members, or in this case, your fellow neighbors, please keep these Zoom meeting norms in mind. We want to start on time so we can end on time. Please raise your hand to be recognized to talk. There's only going to be one speaker at a time. Please move to a quiet area and silence any background sounds when speaking. Make sure to speak loud and clear so everyone can hear. Everyone's going to be provided a chance to speak before a repeat speaker, but please be respectful of other ideas and perspectives. We want to avoid any finger pointing. Try to differentiate between I know and I think or fact versus opinion. And lastly, any inappropriate written and or verbal comment or language, including personal attacks, accusations, will result in the attendee being removed from the meeting. If there's anything we've missed, we'll pause here. You can either raise your hand, ask in the Q&A, and we'll move on then. And then Nate, I see you have your hand raised. You can go ahead and unmute if you'd like.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, hi.
Hi, I asked a question in the Q&A too. The webinar feature sort of like blocks us off from information, including how many people are here. So I'd love to know
Yes.
how many people are here.
Oh, right now I have 7. And
Okay,
it'll
great.
also at the end, after this meeting, I'm jumping ahead of myself a little bit, but after this meeting, all of the polling questions that we asked tonight, a summary of the results will be shared on the project website.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome. Were there any other questions on just the structure of how this meeting is going to be run or technical questions? Don't see any, so we'll move on. So moving on to the next section, the traffic calming process. What is traffic calming? Here's a definition from the Institute of Transportation Engineers. Traffic calming is the combination of mainly physical measures that reduce the negative effects of motor vehicle use, alter driver behavior, and improve conditions for non-motorized street users. So traffic calming, it's not a new concept. There are many other places in the US and across the globe that utilize it in their road and street designs. There are also many examples in Ann Arbor, and we'll show some of them in later slides. The traffic calming program in Ann Arbor is designed to provide residents with a formal process for engaging with the city in a partnership to perform a technical analysis of traffic concerns on local streets and explore potential solutions. It's a 5-step program. We'll briefly describe each step, but there's also a guidebook available online that has more detail on each step and the structure of the program if you want to review anything after this meeting. Step 1 is the resident initiated petition. The Fulmer Street project started with one of your neighbors acting as a petitioner who submitted a request to the traffic calming program that defined the area as Fulmer Street between Miller Avenue and Foss Street. They gathered signatures from other residents who lived in the defined area and submitted it to the city. The requirement for the traffic calming program to accept that request is at least 50% of the defined project area must support the project, and a preliminary technical study must result in at least 10 points. So there's all the criteria that goes into that scoring. This summary is available on the project website, but this is just to show you that 54% of the project area addresses signed the petition in support of this project, and your preliminary study resulted in 22 points. If you want to look at the detail of how those points are broken down, again, it's available on the project website, which I know I keep referencing. If you didn't catch it at the beginning slide, it'll be up there on the last slide. And then moving on to step 2 was where Wade Trim stepped in, where we stepped in. We sent out mailers with a questionnaire to all project area residents to see what specific concerns you might have and also what experiences you may have had with traffic calming in general. There's a detailed summary of the questionnaire, but basically 80% of those who participated in the questionnaire supported the project moving forward. The requirement was at least 50%. And then what that summary, this is like a summary of the summary, but in general, the results indicated that speeding and cut through traffic is observed. There's a lack of traffic control on the street. There are important pedestrian crossings throughout the corridor and also frequent mid-block crossings where there aren't any crosswalks currently. There was also high traffic volumes cited in some of the responses, as well as on-street parking, creating difficulty seeing pedestrians. And then Fulmer Street also has Garden Homes Park and a path that leads to another neighborhood, which also leads to the elementary school and middle school nearby. We'll pause here again. Were there any other concerns or maybe context to the neighborhood that we might have missed if anyone wanted to add? Oh, go ahead, Rachel. I see you have your hand raised. You can unmute yourself if you'd like.
Thank you. I'd just like to add that our proximity to the highway isn't reflected here, so people often come flying off the M14, cut down Foss to Fulmer to avoid the light at the Miller Maple intersection. So I think that adds to the volume and this in a way that's not reflected on this piece of the map.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.
And then Nate, you have your hand raised. You can go ahead.
Yeah, just ditto what Rachel said. That's the reason this is a cut through. I mean, otherwise nobody would be cutting through the neighborhood. It's a really convenient way to get to 14, and unfortunately convenient way.
Okay. Thank you. Anu, I see you have your hand raised. And please correct me if I'm mispronouncing.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. No, that's perfect, Anu. I just wanted to add also that the high school is not too far up from Garden Homes. And so while there is a crosswalk, you know, from the Garden Home area to the across M14, that also creates a little bit of a, you know, kind of a dangerous issue with kids using that crosswalk.
Oh, okay. Okay.
I don't know if that's clear or not, but I just wanted to add that if you go up Foss, and then take a right on Maple, there's a crosswalk that goes across the traffic circle, kind of. So it just adds to Rachel's point of like people kind of flying through.
Oh, I see it. I see what you mean. It's cut off from here, but there's a traffic circle like right up in this corner. Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so I'll definitely take note of that. Thank you. That was helpful. So that's just that and that feedback, and then what we've collected from the initial questionnaire. That's what we took in developing our starter idea here in step 3. So step 3 is where we are today, where most of our focus will be for the rest of the meeting. But before we present the starter idea and do the polling, we'll do an orientation on the device toolbox that's described in the program's guidebook. I'm going to launch another poll. This is just a quick poll to see how familiar people may be with the guidebook. Question reads, have you reviewed the traffic calming guidebook, specifically the device toolbox found on pages 9 through 12? We'll give it just a moment or so longer before we end the poll and share the results. So it seems like most people, majority of people have at least looked at it. Some might need a refresher, but we do have some people who haven't had a chance to look at it yet at all. So we will kind of speed through, but want to make sure we pause for any questions along the way. So because of the structure of this program, these traffic calming projects are pretty limited to the device toolbox and just the guidebook in general. That means if it's not in the toolbox, it's not going to be an option for this project, or at least under this project, unfortunately. Some of the commonly suggested solutions that are not included in this program are stop signs, cul-de-sac or street closure, police enforcement, any new sidewalk installation, removal of existing devices. This means that within the scope of this project, we can't fully address the concern of traffic control. I know that came up in some of the questionnaire responses or the mid-block crossings. We won't be able to create new crosswalks or stop signs as a part of this project. However, if you want additional information on any of these topics, there are some resources in the guidebook. There are some additional resources at the A2Gov website. You can also reach out to me with any additional concerns, through the course of this meeting or afterwards, and I'll make sure that they get sent back to the engineering department so they're at least aware and maybe can provide some other solutions for you. With that, I'm going to hand it off to Lori to start digging into the toolbox and some of our examples that we have.
Thank you, Christy. On pages 9 to 12 of the traffic calming guidebook, devices are grouped into things you drive over and things you drive around. A disclaimer about this portion of the presentation: some of the devices that are in the guidebook are not covered tonight. This is because they're not feasible for this specific project, either from an engineering perspective or the Ann Arbor Fire Department has requested that we not use them. Things you drive over are devices that slow traffic by creating discomfort if traveled over at a speed exceeding 25 miles an hour. The toolbox presents 4 devices that fall under this category, including speed humps, speed tables, raised crosswalks, and raised intersections. A typical speed hump diagram is shown on the left, and an example from Wells Street is shown on the right. Speed humps are typically 12 feet wide, 3 inches high, have a parabolic shape, and extend the full width of the street except for the gutter. And studies have found that there are some benefits from speed hump treatments, including speed reductions, traffic volume reductions, and crash reductions. Some other notes regarding speed humps include the height is designed for the ease of bike usage and bike safety. And if previously permitted, vehicles can park on speed humps. Also, trash cans can be placed on speed humps if necessary. This is a speed table. You can see a fully constructed example on Glenwood Road near Washtenaw Avenue. Speed tables are raised devices that extend the full width of the street, except for the gutter. They're typically 22 feet long with tapered edges, a flat 10-foot center platform, and are 3 inches high. Studies have found benefits of speed hump treatments may include reduction in traffic volumes, as well as reduction in crashes. Some other notes regarding speed tables include the speed reduction is less than that of a speed hump. The height is designed for the ease of bike usage and bike safety. If previously permitted, vehicles can park on speed hump or speed tables, and trash cans can be placed as well. The platform width can be customized. This is a raised crosswalk. The example shown is on Forest Avenue near Woodlawn Avenue. Raised crosswalks are raised devices that extend the full width of the street except for the gutter. They're typically 18 feet long with tapered edges, a flat 6-foot center platform marked with crosswalk striping, and 3 inches high. Studies of streets with raised crosswalk treatments have shown speed reductions, traffic volume reductions, as well as crash reductions. Some other notes regarding raised crosswalks include they increase pedestrian visibility. The installation must be compliant with ADA or American Disabilities, and parking on the crosswalk is illegal, raised or not. This is a raised intersection. This example is at Maplewood and Norwood Street. At a raised intersection, each leg of the intersection is ramped to raise the entire intersection by 3 inches high. Pedestrian crosswalks may also be marked and raised to the same elevation. Raised intersections are shown to reduce vehicle speed and increase pedestrian visibility. They must be compliant with ADA. They are designed for bike safety and to have minimal impact to emergency vehicle response time. If there's any questions about devices you drive over, please raise your hand or use the Q&A function. Okay, I'm not seeing any questions, so we'll move on. The other group of devices in our toolbox are things you drive around. This type of device slows traffic by creating the perception of less room for error in a road that's visually or physically narrower. The device toolbox presents 7 devices that fall under this category, including pedestrian gateways, median islands, pedestrian islands, residential traffic circles, mini roundabouts, curb extensions, and chicanes. The next few slides will describe each of these devices except for pedestrian gateway and mini roundabout. These devices have been omitted from this project due to street width requirements set by the fire department and conflict with existing traffic controls. Residential traffic circles are raised circular islands of pavement, most commonly at 4-legged intersections. They do not change existing traffic controls such as stop signs. This example is on Yost Boulevard. Residential traffic circles have been shown to reduce mid-block speeds, intersection crashes, and overall crashes. Other considerations are that they have a minimal effect on cut-through traffic. Left turns may be difficult for larger vehicles. They may shift vehicles closer to crosswalks. Bicyclists navigate with traffic around the circle. Landscaping would not be an option in this project in order to maintain emergency vehicle access and possible driver confusion. Curb extensions can include several designs: curb bump outs, mid-block bump outs, and chokers. Shown on the right is a bump out at Granger Avenue and White Street. These devices act as an extension of the curb line to physically and visually tighten the corridor by narrowing street width. 2 parallel curb bump outs can be used to create a single lane width passageway or choke point. Alternating curb bump outs can be used to create a chicane effect. Curb extensions may require drainage considerations. They may require the loss of on-street parking. They may cause debris to collect around the device, and they must maintain 20 feet for emergency response vehicles. 2-lane chokers are found to reduce speeds but only have a minor reduction in traffic volumes. 1-lane chokers were also found to reduce speeds and reduce volumes of traffic, as well as rely on regulatory signs and driver courtesy. Devices applied at intersection and mid-block locations shorten pedestrian crossing distance, improve pedestrian visibility, and eliminate illegal parking. The slide shows an example of alternating curb bump outs that create a chicane effect. Like other curb extensions, chicanes may require drainage considerations, may require loss of on-street parking, may cause debris to collect around the device, must maintain 20 feet for emergency response vehicles. Other devices include neighborhood gateway treatments. These are a physical landmark that indicates a change from a higher speed arterial road to a lower speed residential or commercial district. Increased awareness for residential speeds. They may require additional right-of-way, and neighborhood or adjacent property owners may bear landscaping installation and maintenance cost. If there are any questions about devices you drive around, please raise your hand or use the Q&A function. Nate, go ahead and unmute yourself, please.
Oh, great.
Hi.
The chicane option,
Mm-hmm.
I noticed you didn't provide an example from Ann Arbor. Is that because we're not using those here?
Let me see.
I don't know of any, I haven't looked at any examples
seen any.
specifically of chicanes.
It's very
honestly.
odd. It's like a very odd formulation. Like it seems, yeah, I'm not surprised we haven't used it.
Do you want me to answer, Christine, Lori?
Yeah,
Sure.
Andrea, if you have
Okay.
an answer.
Hi, all. I'm a little seasoned traffic calming person here at the city of Ann Arbor. So no, we have not used chicanes in the city of Ann Arbor. It's not that they aren't, they can be effective. It's just we haven't used them yet. There's that community members haven't really been open to it. And so that's why they were not probably proposed.
Makes sense. Thank you.
Yep.
Thanks, Andrea.
There's also a question in the Q&A asking, can you confirm that speed bumps and crosswalks are part of the options? Yes, so the answer is yes. We presented the descriptions of those. Also, and just also to let you know that they are options for this street, for this project. Ross, you
And
can go ahead and unmute.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
yes.
Okay. So the path that connects our neighborhood to the neighborhood over in the elementary school area,
Mm-hmm.
there used to be like a curb cut so that people riding their bikes from the path could just ride out into the street. I don't know when the city changed that, but it's just a curb now. That is pretty much exactly where most kids cross the street. I'm personally currently a fan of the raised crosswalks. If that were something that we ended up doing, would we be able to put a raised crosswalk there, even though there's not a curb cut designating it as a crosswalk spot?
We looked at the idea of putting a device right at that path because we knew it was important to people who are living on the street and people who might cut through from other neighborhoods. It's not entirely out of the realm of possibilities, but there are a lot of utilities in that area as well that would prevent us from putting sidewalk ramps in there. We wouldn't want to put a sidewalk without the ramps. Again, putting in new sidewalk ramps isn't part of this program. But we did speak, I did speak with the city inspector, and they kind of had an idea of where other possible crosswalks could go. But they wouldn't be directly at that path, unfortunately, because of the utilities that are in the area.
I also want to just push the point home that this traffic calming, one of the things that we probably should add to, because it's been popping up a lot, adding additional ramps are not part of this program, and neither are sidewalks. That is outside this program and done part of the sidewalk program. So if that is something you guys are interested in, we can take that back. Christy, make that a note as a follow-up discussion, and we can put that as a request to our sidewalk program, which has a millage. So that would be done outside this program.
Perfect. Does that help, Ruth? Answer your
Yes, it does.
give more. I mean, it's gives more context to what's going on in that area. We know it's important, but
Yes, I mean the
scope of this
utilities
program,
being, the utilities being there definitely make a whole lot more sense. So yes. But thank you for answering my question.
Oh, of course. Rachel, you also had your hand raised. You can go ahead.
Thank you. So to clarify, if there was a raised sidewalk across, like coming from the path, would it even require a curb cut? Could it go straight across and then kind of avoid some of the issues with the utilities and the need for installing a curb cut? It would just seem a shame to not accommodate for the path where that's so much of the school traffic comes from, and then to put crosswalks that would be less utilized in other places on the street.
I hear what you're saying. The any sidewalk ramp, and again, we can take this request and pass it on to the sidewalk program to see what their perspective is on how they can hopefully fit something in that is tailored to what Fulmer Street needs. But if they were to put a sidewalk there, any sidewalk ramp or raised crosswalk has to meet ADA standards. And we wouldn't, Lori, I'm not sure if I'm pulling from the right source of information, but to put something just like a flat across wouldn't be possible. It wouldn't be in line with ADA standard.
Right, if the ADA standards do require a ramp and then a flat landing, so that would be something that would be part of it required.
And we are getting a little ahead of ourselves.
Yeah.
We will go in, once we break down the starter idea itself, we can talk more about this crossing. Because like I said, I do know that it's important, and I want to make sure that people are comfortable with the starter idea. And if there are any changes that we'd like to see, I want to make sure that we get all of that incorporated. So before we move on, I saw that Kevin has their hand raised. If you'd like to go ahead and unmute.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask, what sort of coordination is possible between the sidewalk program and this program? Like say in the case where there's definitely going to be a new crosswalk or curb cut somewhere, is that able to be coordinated?
We'd be able to, I do know that we'd be able to send this information back to the sidewalk program, and we can share with them the progress that we're making with this traffic calming. I do know coordination is possible. I'll just leave it at that.
Thank you.
Yes. And then there was one more question in the chat. Just wondering how much street parking is lost with any of the toolbox options. Was that a concern of the questionnaire? Was it a concern of the questionnaire? I know that there were some comments stating that the on-street parking was causing visibility issues. There wasn't any statements on not wanting to lose on-street parking, but yes, with some of these devices, you do lose street parking. As far as how much, it depends on the device. And also we have to keep in mind that we make sure there is proper clearance that's set by the fire department. So I'll move forward. And again, we'll break down the parts of the starter idea and be able to have more discussion on it. But I'll just get through some of these other slides here. So if you'd like to see additional examples of how some of the devices are used, there is actually an interactive map on the traffic calming website. It shows all the past and current projects. I believe this is our project up here. Or no, sorry, it's this purple one. We're in progress. We're up here. Okay, so now that we've covered what devices from the guidebook are applicable to Fulmer Street, we'll present the starter idea. Again, this is a draft plan that we've created based on the data collection, including feedback from the initial questionnaire and that preliminary traffic study. So we'll show each of the proposed devices in the plan, and then we'll take time to discuss and answer any questions you might have, and then we'll do polling. So this is the starter idea. Again, this is the draft created based on the information gathered from steps 1 and 2. We've proposed 4 devices throughout Fulmer Street. We see them working together to create a traffic calming effect on the entire section of Fulmer. I'll go through each device one at a time, get some feedback, and move on to the next device. So device number 1, it's a raised crosswalk at the Garden Homes Park entrance. There are currently sidewalk ramps on both sides of the street. So because there are existing ramps, we chose to put in a raised crosswalk there. There aren't any other signs or facilities for pedestrians to alert drivers that there may be people crossing here. But because we know there are already sidewalk connections, we can install that raised crosswalk that will highlight pedestrians, raise them up, especially shorter persons, and provide pavement markings clearly defining that area. Again, raised crosswalk treatments have shown speed reduction, traffic volume reduction, crash reduction. Some other notes regarding raised crosswalks is that as we had mentioned earlier, installation must be compliant with the American Disabilities Act. Parking on a crosswalk is illegal, whether it's raised or not. So there wouldn't be any more or less street parking in this area. And were there any questions on raised crosswalks in general or just this specific device? No, I'll move on to, don't see anything. I'll move on to the next device. Device number 2, we've proposed a speed hump. It's somewhat near between 1658 and 1659 Fulmer Street. This is between that path to the Hatcher Crescent neighborhood and between Garden Homes Drive or Garden Homes Court. Some of the initial questionnaire responses had stated that there used to be speed humps along this street before. There was some favor for using them again. This location was chosen to just one, give proper clearance from the fire hydrants that are on the street. Also the driveways, and as well, we wanted to keep it spaced between the other devices as much as possible. Speed humps, again, they can result in speed reduction, traffic volume reduction, crash reduction. Some things to keep in mind, that legal on-street parking is still permissible on speed humps. They're also designed to be safe for vehicles and bicyclists to travel over. So the maximum height is designed so it's still comfortable for bikes to ride over. Were there any questions on device number 2? Or just speed humps in general? Go ahead, Ruth.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty certain that I'm the one who did the initial petition, and one of the people who was entirely against any traffic calming, particularly speed bumps, lives at that large lot
Oh,
there, and I wouldn't want to upset him, he was definitely adamant about speed bumps, and to put one right in front of his house, I don't know. I just felt like putting that out there.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. Again, we space these devices. We can take another look to see if it can be moved any more to the up and down Fulmer. But in general, it was really tough because there are a lot of driveways here, and we can't put a speed bump like right in front of someone's driveway. And then also we need, in order for it to be tapered at the edges, we do need a little, I think it's 14 feet width in total that we need. And to avoid the hydrant clearance, to avoid driveways, to kind of stay somewhat in the middle of those other devices. That's where this location ended up being, but that is helpful. I definitely can take another look to see if it can be moved any other way, especially if we anticipate maybe someone voting against any plans for especially if it's in front of their home. But thank you.
Right. Yes, thank you.
I don't see any other questions or comments on this device, so I'll move on to the next one. So device number 3, it's a residential traffic circle. It's at the Garden Homes Drive, Garden Homes Court intersection. Again, to achieve a traffic calming effect throughout the entire stretch of Fulmer, it's important that devices are spaced out as equal as possible. So given our constraints, we knew we wanted to put a device here. Again, traffic circles, they don't change existing traffic control. The size of them is pretty small. Garden Homes Drive and Garden Homes Court, they both have stop signs at they both have stop signs at their approaches, and then Fulmer Street is like a free flow traffic. That wouldn't change. We knew we wanted to maintain the traffic control that is there since we can't add anything like stop signs. But this does have the ability to reduce speed since it's something that drivers would need to navigate around. So those drivers coming down Fulmer would need to navigate around it. So it would be a device that can reduce mid-block speeds, intersection crashes, overall crashes. A couple things to consider with traffic circles is that they do have a minimal effect on cut-through traffic. Left turns might be difficult for larger vehicles. They might shift vehicles closer to crosswalks. Bicyclists navigate with traffic around the circle. Landscaping would not be an option in this project just to maintain that emergency vehicle access because they need to be able to drive over this if needed. And then they can cause driver confusion. So with that being said, again, we'll pause here if there's any comment or questions about this device or traffic circles in general. Rachel, you can go ahead and unmute. I saw you had your hand raised first.
Can you explain to us a bit what this traffic circle would look like? Because I understand from the earlier slides and from what you just said, it wouldn't have landscaping. So would it be kind of like an asphalt circle there, or?
It would just be a ring. It'd be a ring, and then the curb, it's called mountable curb, so it's tapered a little bit so that the emergency vehicles can drive over it, or when if they're making a turn like onto Garden Homes or onto Garden Homes Drive, it won't disrupt their vehicles too much if they have to hit it when they turn either way off Fulmer or even onto Fulmer.
Thank you. How would that impact things like plowing and trash removal on the street if it's kind of a bump that's in the middle but not visible necessarily with snow?
So I know I've seen in other instances that the city will place with their bump outs. They let the maintenance teams know when there's been changes. But two, they're also supposed to go out and, especially ahead of snow, they'll like stake curbs so that when snowplows come, they know that they're there even if they're not visible. And then same thing with trash removal. Like, I know that's communication throughout the other departments.
Are there any examples in town of a traffic circle like this? I think the ones in the slideshow did have landscaping on them.
Yes, I don't have an example offhand that doesn't have landscaping. I can go back to the other slide though that was in the description. There it is. So how this would just all be empty. It'd be nothing in the center.
But
there wouldn't be any signing.
There'd be a pole in the middle with sign?
Nope, no sign. That was a request from the fire department. There is regulatory signing that goes along in general with the traffic circle, but it could be placed ahead of the intersection.
And yeah, and in this case, since the fire department has requested the mountable curb and is possibly going to need their vehicles to be able to mount it, that's why that center is going to be paved for this option.
So Lori, Christy, I can add another example. I don't know how familiar all of you are with Broadway Street over there by the hospital. They just put in a new, it isn't a residential traffic circle, it isn't a roundabout, but it is a mountable one, similar to what the fire marshal is interested in. If you guys pull on this one and you're interested in it, we can add that image of what it generally would look like. It doesn't have anything other than mountable curb. It's raised, it's concrete. That's it.
Thanks, Andrea.
Yeah, thank you. It's at Broadway and which intersection?
Broadway Street and Gordon Lane. So like, it's a very weird intersection, but it's an interesting intersection.
Okay.
I saw Nate had their hand raised, or Nate, you can go ahead and.
Great. I think I know the answer to this, but you mentioned polling. So we're going to poll on individual sort of interventions here.
Yes.
And then there'll be some mix. But these all could, but you could also clarify, these all could work together. Like all 4 of these could get implemented. It's not that there's like only a maximum number of these.
Correct. We'll
Yeah.
poll, we want to poll individually on the devices, but at the very end, when we present the final plan, it's going to be, do you support this final plan as a whole?
Right.
So I'm trying to keep in mind to throw it out there that that these devices, we place them in relation to where the other devices are. That's like
Mhm.
the main thing. But you know, like with the speed hump, there's a concern of where it's located. So
Mhm.
you know, we can go back and see if we can move it, knowing that additional information. Or you know, if
Right.
there's if we do the polling on this traffic circle and it ends up being like maybe there are other options that we want to explore, you know, we know to go back at it and workshop it, and then bring out the preliminary plan at the next public meeting.
Great. And I may have missed it, but did you all come to our neighborhood to before proposing these, or is this sort of based
Yes.
on very initial? Okay, great.
No, I was out there.
Great. Okay, great.
I
Thank you.
actually went out there with the city inspector, so that was really helpful too, because they not only know specifically what Ann Arbor standards are for a lot of the construction, especially with utilities. So like the inspector and I really looked at that path crossing, and they were able to point out a lot of the issues that we might not have caught just as like a solo site visit, or even you know a digital walkthrough.
Great. Thank you.
You're welcome. Dave, I saw you have your hand raised if you'd like to unmute.
How it unmuted. Thanks. I live at this intersection, and my opinion is this would be too much for this intersection, but a
Okay.
raised crosswalk would be great.
Okay.
It just doesn't seem like there's that kind of traffic, and the trying to turn left would be very weird.
Yeah. It can cause confusion.
But anyway, I'd love a sidewalk there. I think that would be fantastic. And there's 2 choices where they're lowered.
There are, yeah, right now there are crosswalks at all 4 legs of this intersection. They aren't,
Yeah.
they're marked with this, I'm pretty sure they're all marked this way with those emphasized pavement markings,
Yeah.
but they're not raised. The only thing is it would be a little odd to only raise one. If we were to raise both of them, it kind of creates an odd spacing issue. There was the option of a raised intersection if that's something else that we could explore as well. I think the only reason we tried to present this was because the raised intersection would have to be a little longer than usual, since there's a fire hydrant somewhere
Right
along
there.
the intersection.
Right.
And with the standards that we have to maintain, we'd have to like extend the intersection 40 or so feet beyond just the intersection alone.
Right. Well, if there's a different thing than that for this intersection that can happen, I would like it better.
Okay, that's good to know. Thank you, Dave.
Yep.
And then I just wanted to answer live. There was a Q&A that was mentioned. With any of the devices, how often are they checked for maintenance or repair needs? I don't know if Andrea, if you have a specific schedule that you can reference, but I do know that the city of Ann Arbor has an app where residents or really anyone can submit a ticket to the city, notifying them of any issues, or if you see maintenance isn't being done when it's as, you know, in a timely manner. It's Ticket to Fix It. It's an app, I believe.
Yep, you are correct, Christy. That is the app. It's Click It to Fix It or A2 Fix It, I think, depending on what platform you're using. So maintenance. Let me make sure I understand this question correctly. How often are they checked in maintenance and repair? Well, raised devices or any installed traffic calming devices should last the same length as pavement. So they are inspected as needed, and we are in the process of creating, because all of the devices that have been installed, they're since 1996 was when we first started installing them, are now just hitting that point where they need to be replaced, kind of like pavement. So it's pretty much the same life cycle of the other stuff. So I hope that answered the question. We're just now seeing that we have to start replacing them and maintaining them. The pavement markings that go along with devices typically get refreshed as people are going through the neighborhood and part of our pavement marking contract. If you notice that there is an issue, we always send an inspector out to go look. So if you're seeing that the pavement markings look off or a device has been destroyed because of, heaven forbid, something like anything, we've seen very interesting things. We will go out there, look at it, and get it put into the resurfacing program as a maintenance item. So I hopefully that addressed your question. We're now just seeing that we're having to maintain the devices that were put in back in like the 1990s.
Thanks, Andrea. I didn't see any other questions. So unless there are any last minute questions, I'll move on to the last device before we can discuss anything else and then move on to polling. So the last device is another raised crosswalk at Fulmer Street and Fulmer Court. Again, because there are currently sidewalk ramps here, already existing sidewalk connections, we can install a raised crosswalk. So there are markings. I don't believe they're emphasized. I think they're just 2 lines. But this way, we're elevating pedestrians. We're clearly defining this area as a crosswalk. It's also a raised treatment, so vehicles do have to slow down to drive over it. So as a reminder, raised crosswalk treatments, they can show speed reduction, traffic volume reduction, overall crash reduction. Some things to keep in mind is that installation does have to be compliant with the ADA or American Disabilities Act, and parking on a crosswalk is illegal, raised or not. So again, this is actually, now that I think about it, none of these devices will take away any existing legal on-street parking. So that's circling back and answering that other question. Was there any comment or question on this device? Ruth, you can go ahead.
This is my husband has a question.
Okay.
So I see that the proposed location for traffic calming involves the intersection between Fulmer Court and Fulmer Street. And while I appreciate that that is trying to do something, the greatest issue that presents itself to our neighborhood is as a cut through during construction, during U of M games, during any opportunity for people to cut the corner at the street and drive at high speed down the straight length of Fulmer and Franklin.
Mm-hmm.
No, Foss and Miller. Yes, go ahead.
Anyway, the putting traffic calming at the intersection that is a short distance away from Miller is going to cause people to slow down for a brief period of time before, having the straight length, particularly the straight length of road on Fulmer, which is where the kids all walk to school down that path, that doesn't address that issue at all.
I'll go back to this image with the entire plan. So your concern, if I'm understanding correctly, is it's just this straightaway that you're saying is experiencing a lot of high speeding. Is that correct?
Yeah, the Tesla cutting the corner to avoid the light at Maple Miller and driving 65 down that section, or the people cutting the corner when traffic backs up at the intersection from Maple to Miller every time there's road work on Jackson or during U of M games, that people cut and then burn down the straightaway to get around the light because traffic backs up there. So that section, and also Foss, although I'm not there to witness how much of it goes on Foss.
So with this project area, we wouldn't be able to propose anything along here down Foss, just with the limits of the project. But through the entire corridor, we're proposing these 4 devices as a whole. So it's again, we're going one by one just so we can answer questions or get some feedback on each device. But as a whole, this plan will ultimately be presented with multiple devices that will work along the entire corridor. So, we're proposing a raised crosswalk here.
Okay.
But it wouldn't just be, here's a raised crosswalk, have fun at the rest of Fulmer Street. That's why we want to put multiple devices that are, with these vertical devices.
That clarifies it for me.
Oh, good.
Yeah, I was gonna add to, we have the devices you drive over and the devices you drive around, and with the series that Christy has presented here and the spacing, that's just enough to make, the driver slow down and add that discomfort level. So that's what we're showing here, but we talk, like Christy said, we're talking about them one by one, but the idea is to have that series work together.
Thank you. That identifies that it's not the single point, that you're actually treating it holistically with multiple points of modification. That answers everything. Thank you so much.
Oh, good. Good. I'm glad.
Thank you.
And then Rachel, I saw you have your hand raised. You can go ahead and unmute.
Sure, thank you. So for the raised crosswalk we were just talking about at the intersection of Fulmer Street and Fulmer Court, just a point of clarification. On that side of Fulmer Street, there's no sidewalk between Fulmer Court and Garden Homes Court. There's just that little space without sidewalk. So I would wonder, even with the fire hydrant where it is, if the crosswalk ought to be on the side of Fulmer Court that's closer to Miller. Otherwise, you're crossing from no sidewalk.
Let me go to the closer one.
Right there. Yeah.
Are you saying, okay.
So the section of the street beginning with 2140 on the other side of the road there's no sidewalk there. But on the side of the road, on the piece of the road by 2135, there is sidewalk there.
Okay, so are you
see the hydrant in your picture? So I wanted to flag that as a possible issue.
So you're you would rather see the crosswalk be on this side? Am I showing that correctly?
Or I'm raising it as a question because it seems a little awkward to be pointing people from a sidewalk and a crosswalk to no sidewalk on the other side. And neighbors should correct me if I'm wrong about where the sidewalk is there.
Hey, Christy, I just pulled up in Google Maps. I just want to let you know. She is correct. There is no sidewalk there on that side to where it is. So it would have to come back closer to the south side where your cursor's at. Yep, that part.
Yeah.
Perfect.
I don't believe there are existing ramps here.
Yeah, I think where you have it is ramp to ramp.
Yeah, I
Um,
remember choosing this because there were existing ramps, but I totally missed that part about no sidewalk at those ramps.
What?
I know that we would not be able to,
Eat your
it would not be
peas.
within the scope of this program to put a crosswalk across Fulmer Court because it really isn't serving Fulmer Street. But I'll make a note of this. The only thing is we do want to have some kind of device here. If it ends up not being a crosswalk at all, or if it ends up having to be something where we let the sidewalk program know that there's a desired crossing, at least somewhere at this intersection, or like some kind of continuation, we can do that. But we do want to have some sort of device here. So my only other thinking would be maybe another speed hump, because as it was pointed out, there are vehicles that make sharp turns off of Miller onto Fulmer, and to slow them down relatively earlier in the corridor would be helpful. Were there any other comments? Or this was the last device too, by the way. We'll move on to polling next, but I guess I'll also pause here if there is just any other input after having gone through all of these devices. If anyone wants to go back at anything, we can. Nope. Okay. Don't see anything, so we'll move
Kevin.
on. Oh,
Looks
go
like
ahead,
Kevin.
Kevin.
Yep.
I just wanted to ask if there were any curb extensions or bump outs considered for this project.
Did I have any curb extensions in some of the earlier plans? I know that I looked into the potential of, let me go back to this whole one. I know I thought about looking at curb extensions in place of the speed hump here, but the street is pretty narrow. And with the clearance that we try to maintain for the fire department, it was getting a little tricky to find a spot that had enough space. It's definitely something that was there like a specific area that you had hoped to see that, or?
No, I just noticed that there were none included, even though I thought they were listed as a possibility. So I was just
Yes,
curious.
they were listed as a possibility. Basically, the idea behind the meeting is that either before you come in, you've had a chance to be familiar with what devices are used in the program. We try to give an overview of the ones that we know are at least somewhat feasible, like tentatively feasible in this area. We try to do our best to rule out the ones that would be too difficult or would be a flat out no. But when we present the starter idea, like by no means does it have to stay like this. So we hope that with like some of the feedback that we get from residents is that, well, oh, you mentioned this, like you mentioned the curb extension, I would rather see, or I think it'd be easier for me to live with it if it was a curb extension rather than a speed hump. So it is an option. That's why we did want to cover it. But when we put the design together, we ended up leaning more towards vertical devices. just to help with some of the speeding, and then plus with the pedestrian concerns, we wanted to make sure we were raising the crosswalks that are there first before we started filling in the gaps on Fulmer with other devices. So I hope that answered your question. But if it is something that we discussed earlier, but is not in this plan, but you would like to see, it'd be helpful to kind of get some more feedback from people on that. And then there's another question in the QA. Once a device is installed, how is it evaluated for effectiveness? There is a 1-year follow-up study done on all traffic calming projects. So that involves a follow-up survey that would be sent out, and any issues then could be addressed.
Christy, we've also recently started collecting after data as
Oh,
well.
cool.
Not always, but like more consistently.
Mhm.
And that has consistently shown a decrease in speed. This program does not always address cut through. I mean, cut through is still going to happen, but at least the cut through that's happening does decrease speed. So
Okay. Thank you, Andrea. So I don't see any other questions or hands raised. So we'll move on to polling. And again, this is device number 1. I'm going to launch that poll. The question reads, do you support device number 1, raised crosswalk at Garden Homes Park? There are a ton of options for you to answer with. Please only focus on the ones that are yes or no, I live in the petition project area. I think we've had a couple people add on. So just to refresh, there are options if you live in the petitioned project area. There's an option if you're a non-resident of the Fulmer Street neighborhood. And there's an option if you live in the informational area, which is you're not directly on Fulmer Street, but you're near it. You would have gotten a postcard hand delivered to you yesterday, I think. And I'll leave the poll open a little longer. I see we don't have full participation yet, so I'll give you another moment or so to answer. But then I do want to say there is a question in the, or a comment in the Q&A. Someone would like to stay on mute, but it says, I live directly across from the path. Kids fly off that curb on bikes, scooters, and on foot. They don't often look. I really worry a speed bump isn't enough. I will say that there are a lot of solutions that can help pedestrians, but that are outside the scope of this program. So things like pavement markings that aren't associated with these devices, or signs maybe for the pedestrians, things like that. We can definitely pass those along to pass the concern along to the city and try to find out some more resources for you. So I can, oh, you know what? And I completely forgot to mention this before, but if you want to be on the email list, which is basically me emailing you to let you know a letter is coming in the mail, you can drop your email in the Q&A and I'll save it and add you on that list. But specifically to this question, I can find some additional resources for you, Amelia, if you're able to leave your contact information, and I can send them to you. So So I'll end the poll because we had full result or full participation. So it looks like there is just all around support for the raised crosswalk. And then we'll move on to polling for the second device. Again, device number 2 is a speed hump between the footpath and Garden Homes Drive or Garden Homes Court, whichever side you're looking on. Do you support device number 2? And I'll leave it up for just a moment. So I'll end the poll and share the results. There is full support for this one. I do see some additional context that I'm receiving, so I appreciate that. We'll go back, move on to the next one. This one has 2 parts to it. So first question is, do you support device number 3, residential traffic circle at Garden Homes Court or Garden Homes Drive? And then there's an additional question to it, or another part to the poll. Do you support a raised intersection?
And Christy, I just want to ask a follow-up question. They can answer yes to both. They can answer no to both. They can answer yes to one and no to the other. It's just pulling information. We can tease out data, correct, if we need to?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes, thank
perfect.
you
I
for
just want
that.
to make sure that that's clear to the people out there polling on this, that if you like both, feel free to say you like both. That'll be utilized and very helpful.
And then Rachel, I saw you have your hand raised if you'd like to unmute while we're keeping the poll question up here.
Sure, just a question about this question. If we like the idea of something there, but maybe not one of the choices, should we just vote no?
Please. And if you want to send anything back to me, you can do so in the Q&A and I can respond privately to it. Or, we can, once we get through the polling, we can open it up to discussion again if there's anything that we want to, anything that was thought of or you didn't feel like you got to express. So we have full participation here. So we'll share the results. So I do see that there is some pushback on this device, on both of them, actually. So I'll go through the last poll question and then I'll come back to this so maybe I can get some additional feedback from people. And then lastly, this is device number 4. Do you support device number 4, the raised crosswalk at Fulmer Court? And then I also want to say I have gotten some emails. I just didn't want to publish them. So I think I probably should have answered to you privately, but I just wanted to let you know that anyone who sent an email, I did get it. And I'll leave the poll open for just a moment longer. Okay, beautiful. So again, we're getting some votes of non-support for this. Still, everyone here is a resident, so this is good. Okay, beautiful. Polling's done, but before we wrap up the meeting, and before we revisit those couple devices or open the floor up, I just want to go over what the last few steps of the program are. So after today, the next step that you can expect is meeting number 2. Meeting number 2 is going to consist of 2 parts. One is a self-guided tour, and then another meeting just like tonight. That meeting is scheduled for May 3rd. Following today's meeting, we will post the presentation, the recording. It'll be posted to the project website in the next couple weeks. We'll also post a summary of the polling and then use all the feedback that we're getting to create our preliminary plan. So for the self-guided tour, you'll receive a mailing packet at least 2 weeks ahead of that May 3rd meeting. The packet's going to contain the preliminary plan, device images, and device descriptions, which can all be utilized to do a walkthrough of Fulmer Street prior to the meeting. The approximate device locations will be marked in spray paint along the pavement, and it'll display there'll be a post in the ground to display the device image and description nearby that location. You can also, if you'd like to, you can use Google Street View to conduct the self-guided tour and reference that packet. Again, meeting number 2, it's another one on Zoom. It's scheduled for Wednesday, May 3rd at 6 p.m. During the meeting, it'll be very similar to the structure of today. We'll present the preliminary plan, we'll answer questions, we'll get feedback, we'll do polling on each device. And again, we'll poll each device individually, but also keep in mind the idea is that all of the devices that we're showing are intended to work together. And then the last step of the traffic calming process is final polling. After meeting number 2, we'll go back again, we'll make any adjustments if necessary. We'll finalize the plan and we'll send it out to project area residents. All residents and property owners will be mailed the final polling package, which will contain a description letter, the final plan, and your final polling card. Just like the initial questionnaire, you'll have the option of submitting your poll either by mail or completing it online. To continue moving forward onto the city council approval, more than 50% support is required. So again, the polling will be on the plan as a whole. It won't be device by device like we're doing today. It'll be as a whole, do you support this plan? The traffic calming program requires that more than 50% of people who participate in the poll have to support it in order for us to request support from the Transportation Commission, as well as submitting it to City Council for final approval. If the project receives approval from City Council, they'll set a construction date and do final technical designs. So again, these are just some dates to all of the things that I just mentioned. Like I said, following today's meeting, in the next couple of weeks, we'll put the presentation, the recording, the summary, all of that on the project website. We'll use the feedback from today to go back on this starter idea and create the next iteration, which is called the preliminary plan. Our meeting to discuss our next meeting date again is May 3rd. We'll set up the self-guided tour at least 2 weeks ahead of that date. The final polling card will be sent out by May 17th, and the deadline will be June 5th. Again, if that requirement of more than 50% approval of the final plan is met, we'll request support from the Transportation Committee, hopefully at their July meeting, and then submit the plan for City Council approval tentatively. I'm sorry, June and July. Sorry, Transportation Commission meeting tentatively in June, City Council meeting hopefully in July. There are target dates in place, but I know it's not uncommon for meeting agendas to change, so we can keep you updated on that, but that's what our target is right now. So again, please reach out if you have any thoughts or questions that might pop up after today. I'm available by phone, email. Again, I've gotten some emails coming in. I do have them. If you want notifications about the upcoming mailings, please just, again, drop your email in the Q&A. And I will relaunch the demographic survey. If you didn't get a chance to do it at the beginning of the meeting, please take a moment to fill this out. It is feedback that the city as a whole uses for their public engagement process. We are running short on time, but I will stay. We're not there at 7:30, but I will stay 10 minutes after. If I know we want to try and get some more feedback on those other devices. So if you have anything that you want to discuss, please hang on. Otherwise, thank you so much for your time and participation. I really appreciate care and interest in this project. I hope you have a great rest of your evening. With that being said, Nate, I saw you have your hand raised.
Yeah, hi. I was filling out the poll. The vote, you mentioned what happens if it does go through, but if it doesn't go through, what's the process there? If people don't support, it might make sense that people don't support the full suite of final proposals, but support some of it. So how do you handle a no vote?
So the process is that if that for the final plan, once we send it out for polling, if it doesn't meet that criteria of more than 50% response support is achieved, then we have to let residents know that the traffic calming program has not gone through. And Andrea, please correct me if I'm wrong, but then the process would have to start over from the beginning.
Yes, they would have to repetition. You are correct.
That's why these public meetings are important, because we want to make sure we're getting the feedback directly from residents, so we can avoid that, because there are a lot of people, like obviously there was a lot of support in that initial petition. So we don't want to let anyone down by not, creating something that everyone can agree on. So really these public meetings are opportunities to figure out where there might be some hesitation, or where people might want to see changes from what we've come up with.
Got it. Okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
You're welcome. And then I know it was device number 2 and 4, the speed hump and that last raised crosswalk at Fulmer Court had a few handful, and as well as the traffic circle. The traffic circle and that last raised crosswalk had some votes of no. If anyone wants to add any kind of context, if you want to do it in the chat, you can do it anonymously, or if you want to unmute and talk, I can stick around. Go ahead, Rachel. I see you have your hand up.
Sure. So given the polling, do you think that you all would reevaluate maybe some of the choices by Garden Homes Court and think about maybe a speed bump over there or one closer to Miller as well in lieu of those crosswalks, kind of to address some of the issues that Daniel raised and the fact that there's not a full sidewalk on the side where one of the crosswalks is proposed? Is that within the scope of what might happen as a follow-up to this meeting?
Yes, so the follow-up, so any other, I believe, so there was the question of moving the crosswalk or putting a speed hump instead of the one at Fulmer Court, and then also looking at an alternative for the traffic circle. I can include that in the discussion summary for this meeting. So providing a somewhat immediate follow-up for the public or for residents to have before we get to the point where we've created a full preliminary plan for the next meeting. But yes, sorry, a really long way to answer your question. Yes, we will be revisiting those things. But again, like the sidewalk is helpful context because it obviously does not make sense to have a raised crosswalk that leads to nothing. But if there were any other considerations, so just want to make sure that I'm getting this correct. Let me go back to this. Nope, this mouse is really tricky. Okay, so the hope was for a crosswalk here or just some kind of raised device here. Is that what your comment had been, Rachel? I'm not hearing anything, but
We did just lose we're getting some power flashes in our neighborhood.
oh
so
no, okay. Okay,
it's possible that people have dropped.
I do see that you're still here, Rachel. If you can talk, you can unmute. But if not, we can go back to it. But like I said, there will be a discussion summary for this meeting where some of these immediate to give some kind of immediate feedback to you. And then if there are any additional comments that you have, again,
Hey, Christy,
yes.
I have a recommendation. So in previous projects that we've done, we've had neighborhoods who have had similar responses to devices where it's kind of divided. So we can go back with everything we've heard, which I think you've written down. And Lori and Christy will come up with a plan that best address what they've heard from this feedback and why they might not have done something else that was said. So we'll have a why we're doing this and then why we didn't do something. Does that seem okay here? Does that make sense, Christy and Lori?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we can just do okay, yeah, we can just do a little bit more work with explaining why we didn't do something. And maybe that's because we couldn't put a crosswalk in because of structures or something that would just be outside of the scope of this program and not happen this year, next year, or the following year. So anyway, that's just a little bit of an example of things. We have done that in the past on other projects where we've explained why we didn't do something that the community wanted, but here is what we heard, and this is what we've done to address what we've heard. But I see you guys have some more hands up.
Yes. Rachel, if you're able to, you can unmute if you had anything to add. But there are some questions in the Q&A I can also address. If folks review the materials after the meeting, can they submit comments? Yes, please. Again, my contact information is up. Please reach out if there's anything you feel like I've missed or that you think of afterwards. And there's another comment for folks who couldn't attend. Can we encourage them to email you after reviewing the meeting materials? Yes, please do that as well. The emails that I do have, I will send an email out once the project website has been updated with the meeting materials. And hopefully that'll be a good notice for you to maybe let other people know who couldn't attend. Nate, I saw you still have your hand up if there's anything you wanted to add.
Yeah, the poll results will go out in the after meeting summary.
Yes, they will.
Okay, great. And I don't know who else is still on, but I wanted to say thank you to Ruth for initiating the proposal. This is something that we've, noticed for years, and this is a long process, but she's initiated this and stuck with it. And I think it's great that that we're at this stage already. So thank you, Ruth.
Thank you, Nate. Yeah, this really relies on resident participation. So also, Ruth, I saw you have your hand raised if you'd like to, if you had anything you'd like to add.
Yeah, thanks, Nate, first of all. And second of all, I feel like I'm not alone in feeling that the biggest concern, obviously my husband is concerned about the straightaway and people speeding up there. It does seem like these devices that have been put out on the table would help a lot more for traffic coming in from Miller heading north. And I feel like it doesn't seem to be like balanced for traffic heading south on Fulmer. And that path is so frequently used. And I know that you guys can't do anything about putting a crosswalk there, but I feel like having the curb bump outs, something up ahead of that to the north, on the north side of Fulmer, nearer to the park, something a little bit more to help keep traffic slow along that straightaway to protect our kids on the way to school and various other people and cyclists going that way, because it's a lot of people. That's all I have to add. It's just really the biggest concern, I think, for most of us.
No, thank you. I'm sorry, I'm trying to get back to the slide. Are you referring to? Sorry, having technical difficulties over here. This section, you're saying you would like to see something in this section here?
Yes, like basically from where Fulmer hits Foss, a little bit past that path that connects Garden Homes to the Crescents. Like that, I see kids walking through the park to get there, and I know the raised crosswalk is great, and I 100% support that. But I almost feel like with everything that's being proposed further south on Fulmer, it's not quite enough for that stretch, which seems to be of most concern, at least from my perspective. And I know a couple other of my neighbors feel the same way.
Okay, I just want to make sure. So you're Ruth, you're saying you would like to see something closer to this path?
Yes, 100%.
Okay, thank you. Let me just make sure I have. I see one more hand raised from Amelia. You can go ahead and unmute if you'd like. We do have to wrap it up though after this, but go ahead, Amelia.
Okay, I just wanted to kind of support what Ruth was saying, but and I'm finally in a quiet spot, so I can do that. I live in the house directly across from the path, And I think most of the traffic comes in from the north, and a lot of the time it's, I think when high school gets out, and then, you know, then there's other times like rush hour and stuff, but it's kind of that time that concerns me the most, because that path, there's middle school kids, there's elementary school kids, and they come down on bikes, on anything with wheels, on their feet, and they don't look. I mean, I see them do it all the time. My kids have done it. And there's, you know, and so that's there. And then, you know, at the park, there's all kinds of people that cross into that park, you know, from anywhere along that stretch. There's sort of that sidewalk, you know, where it sort of fees into the path.
Okay.
And people just walk across the street there all the time. And that is the place, that is where people really, really speed through. And so I'm just, you know, it's kind of the same thing that Ruth already said, but it feels like there is not a whole lot there.
Okay.
And I feel like that is the kind of worst part.
No, I hear you. I appreciate your feedback. Maybe I don't know if I explained this fully, but so when we place these, I'm kind of hearing two things. So when we place these devices, our target speed limit for this area is 25 miles an hour. We want to slow traffic down as close as we can to 25 miles an hour. Engineering best practices give us guidance on, you know, when we use these devices, how far or how close to space them out to achieve that. Because, you know, we don't want to put a device so close to the next one that people are either forced to come to a dead stop when there aren't, you know, pedestrians in the roadway. But we also don't want to space them out too far where, you know, there's just so much distance between device 1 and 2 that vehicles are just speeding up in between them. That being said, I definitely do want to revisit that north section closer to Foss and the path entrance. But we are kind of constrained because I'm hearing also that there's an issue with pedestrian behavior crossing mid-block. So like there is a designated crosswalk for them to use that's in place. This traffic calming won't really provide a solution for them to stop crossing mid-block other than giving them a designated spot to cross. So I just wanted to make sure that I hear your feedback, but I am hearing two different things, and some of those things may not be fully answered by this program. But that being said, I definitely do want to revisit that section near Foss and the park entrance to consider either moving around some of the devices or adding another device to make sure that we feel comfortable that traffic calming is going to extend to both limits of the project area. And I hope that provided you with I hope that answered addressed your concern, Amelia.
Yes, thank you. It did. I think so I'm looking at that stretch also, but I guess I'm also just looking at Foss in general. I mean, that's a pretty big straight stretch. That's sort of the big entrance, and there's nothing there.
And here, like along Foss, that's outside the project limit. So
oh, I see. Okay.
The limit is only Fulmer Street between these two intersections at the end. So with this project or with this petition, we wouldn't be proposing anything specifically aimed at calming traffic on Foss. I will say we did look at a raised intersection here at the here, but there's a hydrant and there were some other issues with the utilities that we turned away and started looking at other things. But knowing how some of the feedback is, we can go ahead and revisit. I know I still see some more hands raised.
Christy, why don't
I-
we take the last two questions and then
Okay.
we're done for the.
Okay.
Is that okay?
Yeah, that sounds good to me. Go
Okay,
ahead,
so-
Brian.
Am I
Go ahead.
unmuted now? Am I unmuted now?
Yes.
Great. I'm Brian's wife, Emily. I wanted
Hi, Emily.
Hi. So I wanted to just put my 2 cents in, and I wanted to highly support what Ruth and Amelia were both talking about. One of my biggest concerns, we live right next to the path, and the path essentially the easiest access route for kids during school time, or any bike or anything, the easiest way to get up onto that path, since there is no crosswalk there and since there is no access to the path, is through our driveway. And there have been more than 20 times in our 3.5 years of living here where, in backing up, we have backed up as people are coming up our driveway, or as kids are cutting across our lawn to get down onto sidewalk. And it's super unsafe. And so there needs to be something there that kids and our community can access, because it's just like an accident waiting to happen, which is really scary for us as the homeowners. And so, and there is nothing. It's just the path just like comes to like a T-bone just at the lawn, and so bicyclists need easy access. Folks who have wheels need easy access. Kids need a lit sign there to make sure that they can be safe in the morning times and whenever they cross. So yeah, from that point and that perspective, I just wanted to make sure to say, like, just personally, from personal experience, like it's like, I would say it's like a daily or a weekly occurrence where I have to be really, really mindful, because the city hasn't provided that resource for our community.
Thank you, Emily. Yes, I knew this crossing was important. I really appreciate all of the feedback on how important it is. So definitely with the discussion summary that we provide after this meeting, hopefully I can have some resources as well for people on partnering with Ann Arbor Sidewalk Program, as well as what preliminary things that we can keep looking at before the next meeting date for that path entrance. And then Rachel will be is our last hand raised. So go ahead, Rachel, if you had anything you wanted to add.
Hi, I just want to underscore what both Emily and Amy and Ruth have all been saying. A few years ago, Amy went out and bought some of those plastic neon slow down, kids live here signs and put them in the road, and they were hit repeatedly. So that was right across from the path. That was our homegrown solution to trying to slow this down. And I think a better way to think about the path is how we do, which is as the Wines and Forsyth super highway. So it's really highly trafficked by kids and those cars that are speeding. So, that really is, as you hear and are saying, that's a real focus for us on the street.
Thank you. I will, just to drive it home, if there's anything that comes up after we end today, there's my contact information. If you didn't already get it, there's the project website. If you didn't have access to it before, I will send an email out to the people that I have on my email list, including those who dropped emails during this meeting. I'll let you know when that discussion summary and all the meeting materials are posted. But other than that, we are running out of time. So I just want to say thank you again for sticking with us, for being an active participant. And I hope you all have a really great night. And with that being said, we'll see you and keep in touch for the next meeting.